How's it going, folks? It's Marshall. Thank you very much for tuning into the show. We got a special episode from the live room here, guys. And we're going to talk about the return of the Prophet 5 and the Prophet 10 from Sequential Circuits. And today I've got not only a Prophet 10 here, this is number 56, serial 56, which is pretty cool. But we also have a couple of the Synth Lizards here with us today. And I just clicked on something. And that's Aaron Russell over here of Imperfect and Filter Sweep on Reddit. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah.
Looking forward to checking out the new toys you got there.
Yeah, new synths and reissues, which is amazing because we'll talk about that a little bit more because this wasn't supposed to be a thing, but it is. And then we have CowFood. What's up, CowFood?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man.
Hanging in there.
Thanks for joining.
Hanging in there. Always.
And
thanks for having me on.
Well, this whole show here today was kind of spurred on by a conversation that you and I had about the reissue of the Prophet and some information that you had found online, and we can talk about this real quick. It is called Voice Component Modeling, and I'll leave a link in the description to this website here that CowFood sent me, and it got us kind of talking about how Dave Smith and Sequential Circuits was able to essentially get a Rev 1, 2, 3, and also have, I guess, a Rev 4 in here, all in one synth. So that's kind of what spurred the show here tonight, and we can talk about it. So, CowFood, why don't you start us off here with this concept of voice component modeling?
So voice component modeling is, well, I don't know. I'm kidding. No, actually, it's changing the tuning of, and also the fluctuations of envelopes, PCAs, and filters per voice, which is to say that you can model like a Memory Moog, a Prophet 5, OBXA, OBX. Pretty much any vintage synth is closely if you have the right stuff to do it with. I don't know how to explain it really than just to show just a basic idea per voice.
Yeah. So
and this also has, I have to give credit to Creative Spiral. He's the guy that did all this.
Yeah.
So I'm just rehashing all his information.
And in his article, he kind of explains a very advanced form of programming a synthesizer using a gated step sequencer to essentially affect different parameters of the synth. And he uses a Dave Smith, is that a sequential Rev 2? Is that labeled as sequential?
That's the one.
Okay.
That's the one he's using.
Yeah.
It's got four lanes of gate sequencing. So it's the ideal synth to use to do this.
Right, but other things kind of come to mind. I wonder if this is something that can be kind of emulated even in soft synths like Omnisphere, where they have a pretty advanced mod matrix, and I think there's a step sequencer in there.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's room in the firmware to put it in, you can set up however they want, i.e. via a dial called Vintage.
Vintage, like what we have here on the
All right.
this knob right here.
Or by allowing the person using the synth to program each gated step to do whatever they want.
Right, so essentially
their own tunings.
With the Rev 2, what he had done is essentially set up each step would progress along, as you press a note on the keyboard, and then after 8 steps it resets to the beginning. So
well, in your case it would be 5 if it was actually indeed used on the P5.
Right. Well, yeah.
After 5.
And this is a 10 though, so it's 10 voices.
Oh, and 10. Okay.
Right. But yeah,
My bad.
Essentially, yeah. If it was a 5-voice synth, you could do every 5, you reset back to 1, and it was pretty interesting. So, CowFood, you've kind of set up a little demonstration, but before we do that, Aaron, is this anything that you've heard about? Have you come across anything like this at all in terms of that concept?
No, this is kind of it's a new idea as far as the implementation, but Now that I'm starting to wrap my hand around it, it occurs to me that there's probably a lot of different ways a person could implement something like this. For example, something I often do in Cubase is you've got these MIDI inserts where you can set it to, on every time you press a note on whatever MIDI lane you have, you could say, okay, randomize it plus or minus 5 of velocity values, or pretty much any value you want. You could set it to CC number 59, and maybe that controls the filter.
Right.
You can say, okay, add plus or 5 on CC 59 every time a note triggers. And so I'm thinking.
So using automation via MIDI.
And it's like it automatically can do some stuff. So
right. Okay.
But like I was mentioning before we started, you start to get into I don't know if there's a MIDI bottleneck could happen. I mean, I don't know how crazy you could get with that theoretically. Well, I think Cubase is limited to 8 slots for that. But it occurs to me there's a lot of interesting ways somebody could add that variation that's not built into a synth. Like I could take any synthesizer that was at least had MIDI implementation and just go bonkers with it way beyond its original intent. Say if it's only got one LFO, where I could use it like it's got 8 LFOs.
Like a Prologue, for example.
Yeah.
That has only one LFO. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if what they have with this idea that CowFood's talking about, if they can find ways, either like something standalone that you can somehow route to whatever synth you want. I don't know how easy it would be to implement it into additional equipment. Because I understand, is this is a special piece of software for the Rev 2 right now, CowFood?
Well, yeah, it's built into the firmware on the Rev 2.
Yeah.
And it has to affect whatever you're talking about. We have to also be able to do per voice tuning if you want to get to where we're going. So each time you hit a key, it'll be a different voice played on that synth. So for like an 8-voice polyphonic synthesizer, each one of those 8 voices will be a little bit out of tune from each other. Or maybe just a few of them will be out of tune from each other. And so when you play a chord, for instance, it'll have a little extra richness, that little fluctuation in the tonality between the voices. So it's like having a synthesizer with 8 oscillators, each being able to be tuned a little bit off from each other.
And it's kind of
like
like
another way to look at it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like when when you think of an analog synthesizer, each voice is built up of its own components and circuitry. So there is, especially as a unit ages, or components that are 40 years ago manufactured, maybe not to the exact specifications from one to the other. There may be variation between the components themselves, and that's what this is kind of trying to emulate, that the imperfections per voice that you might see in an actual old school synthesizer. So the other thing that kind of reminds me of is I have several slim fatties that I've polychained together, and each one of those synths essentially acts as its own voice. And again, they're individual units, and they all kind of have a little bit of a difference between them. They don't sound exactly the same. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. But CowFood, you've got a little example you've got queued up here. Do you want to give us an idea of what voice component modeling sounds like? So
let me start with what it doesn't do, and I'll just put a program on here.
So before you start with that, let us know kind of what you're using and how you've got things set up there.
Okay, so I just have I can't even think of the name of it.
Key step?
Key step. Plugged into the Prophet Rev 2 with MIDI, and then the Prophet Rev 2 just audio out to a mixing board and through speakers, and they'll hear.
Cool.
They'll hear the output, which apparently sounds like a Casio.
Yeah. So CowFood's going to use the mic on his laptop there to pick it up. I mean, you're going to be able to hear it, and then I'll kind of demonstrate what the Prophet 10 does with this vintage knob, and we'll kind of compare, because basically the reason why we're doing this is it seems like there may be some aspect or some kind of similar setup here with how they're achieving getting all these different versions of the Prophet 5 into a single synth. So yeah.
Okay. Well, so normally if I hit a key 8 times, it'll play each voice that I have. Let's pretend this one's an 8 voice, even though it's a 16 voice, because I have it set up to work as 8 in this software. But each time I hit the key, it should sound exactly the same for each voice. They should all be the same tuning for the oscillator that I'm using. Now, if I have 2 oscillators turned on, I'm just going to use 1 oscillator on this as an example. But 1 oscillator is only going to be used to demonstrate this, in which case you'll hear the same you would normally hear the same tuning each time I hit the same key on the keyboard. But in the case of voice component modeling, it will be a different tuning each time I hit the note. So here, I'll just do a C here and see how it goes. I gotta turn it up. And there's basically the example.
Yeah, definitely, because you can definitely hear that. Now, if you play a chord, can you play a chord for us?
Yeah, sure. Where's the Z? Each time I play it, it'll sound a little different. Where one of the notes will be a little out of tune, the other ones will be in tune. So I've only got 1 or 2 lanes actually in the gated sequencer set to be offset, that are out of tune.
And you're using pitch, right? You're not doing any other parameters?
No, just pitch, oscillator 1 frequency.
Because essentially you could add additional lanes that control things like the envelope, the amp envelope or
Right.
the filter envelope, and get a little bit different characteristic on the filter or the amp envelope per voice also, which is pretty cool.
Exactly. This one has 4 lanes, so
Yeah.
per layer. So that's quite a bit. So yeah, you can really get this thing sounding vintage.
So, and then so if we come over to the Prophet 10, and we have this vintage knob here. So let me turn this all the way up to the max, which I think is 4, right? Signifying the Rev 4. Turn this filter up a little bit. So it's rock solid, right? A little bit of drift in there. But as we turn this, I don't know if you guys can hear this over the stream here, but there's definitely a change in what is happening. And it's more than just, there was some concern that maybe this would just be kind of a slop knob, a glorified slop knob, but it's definitely affecting more than just the tuning. I can hear the envelopes are a little different, the filter characters slightly different, and that may just be the filter envelope being affected. I don't know for sure, but yeah.
I think that there was a podcast and it had Dave Smith and another guy from, I think, Sequential, and there was like a round table that you had sent us prior to this. And as I recall, they mentioned multiple parameters that are different. And when they were talking about, well, it's not just a slop knob, because like you mentioned, the envelope, I think it was on the Rev 1. I think what they were talking about, that was the wildest pony. And he was saying, there's some chords would be played on that, and the envelope would be slightly different every time you press the key. So you get a really rich, untamed type of sound. So it's interesting to think about the possibilities that open up when you can implement something like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it seems like, and we're not saying that they're using a step sequencer to accomplish this, but it's probably something similar that's been built into the firmware, is my guess. And when you adjust this knob, you're essentially doing something very similar to the voice component modeling that is in this article here. So
I think it is a step sequencer, and I think that
You think so?
when you're dialing that knob, because it's a gate sequencer. You have to understand it's not a step sequencer as you might think of it. For playing notes, it's a gate sequencer, which means it's taking the gate signal from the keys and adjusting the tuning to the voice per voice. So when you're dialing that knob, it's slightly changing each one of those steps in the gate sequencer to a different value. A little bit down, a little bit up. And they've fine-tuned them probably with original Rev 3s, Rev 2s, and Rev 1s that they had, and sat there for hours and days trying to get the exact value in there for that gate sequencer for each one of those synths.
Yeah.
And then just
And
put it in there.
do we have
That
any idea
dial
how many?
slowly moves those values between them?
Do we know how many lanes that it could possibly
it'd
be working with?
It'd probably be an envelope, amplitude envelope, filter envelope. What else? VCA, and of course the voices, the oscillators. And then I don't know if there might be other stuff you could do. Maybe the LFO drifts. I don't know. Is there such a thing like slew?
Yeah, could be.
Slew on the LFOs.
Um,
So they could add all those things in different lanes. So it could be 5-6 lanes, but they don't need to have. Since it's not bitimbral, they can just keep it at just where it's at, 4 or 5 lanes. It's still, I mean, that's still a lot. I mean, you could really turn a synth into a whole different little beast with that. And that's the main reason I went for this versus the Prophet 08, because of that functionality. So, but I got to dig deeper into it. I need to get Sound Tower to really be able to do it much smoother.
now, is
It
that
takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to do this without a.
is that the editor for the
Yep.
Rev 2?
Sound Tower makes editors for pretty much all the Prophet. All the
Okay.
Prophets, all sequential stuff. And you have
Cool.
to pay like $100 or so to get it. But it's the way to.
Is it the same software? Would it work for the 08?
Oh yeah.
Or do they have just a separate version for the 08?
It's a separate version.
Okay,
Because there's more functionality in the Rev 2.
gotcha.
But there's probably going to be one coming out for the Prophet 5 and Prophet 10. Guarantee it.
Nice, yeah, definitely I'll have to look into that.
And maybe they'll open up the gate sequencers on there. Who knows? Maybe after our little podcast here, they'll be like, "Oh, the jig's up."
The jig's up. Well, I mean, in that podcast, and I'll put a link to the podcast. I don't remember the name of the channel that it's on. It's a group of professionals, and then Dave and one of his colleagues, Andrew, I think was his name, talking about the reissues of this guy and the Prophet 5. And it was interesting. It's a really cool talk because, Dave had said for years and years that he was not going to do this. And people thought, the Prophet 6 is kind of the as close as we would ever get to this. But obviously he changed his mind. And it seemed like they mentioned in the podcast also that the Behringer effect, Behringer may
Do it before Yuli does it.
Yep, and they pretty much said that in that podcast. So check that out. It's a wealth of information, and it's really cool. And the cool thing I think is, Dave did this, and it's not somebody else doing it. It's Dave, and this was his baby from the beginning. And having his stamp on this is like one of the coolest things, I think. It'd be like if Bob Moog was around and reissued the Mini Moog, which he kind of did with the Voyager, but the actual reissue that they did, unfortunately, was done way several years after Bob had passed. So that sucks. But we've got Dave Smith, whose hands were directly involved in making this. So that's pretty cool, I think.
But Marshall, we were both talking. We were thinking that this voice component modeling, however people want to implement it in their synths, is going, like we were saying just a little bit ago too, should probably be showing up more and more, I think, in analog synths and in digital.
Exactly. Yeah, we should then be able to see a lot of vintage Classics return. Now, this is almost more like in terms of polysynths, right? Because we've got several monos that have been reissued. Korg's done the ARP 2600, which is over here, the MS-20 and the MS-20 Mini, the Odyssey. Am I missing any others? The Mini Moog.
And then there's all the Behringer ones.
Right. But in terms of, it's
12
probably,
of them or something.
it's probably like a bit easier to do on a monosynth. The polysynths, although you've seen Roland kind of try and do this with digital, and I don't know if they're doing something similar in their, ACD.
Oh yeah, the System 8 has that. I think it's a vintage parameter. I can't remember. But with the System 8, I think currently, if you buy one, includes the Jupiter 8.
Yeah, and the
Juno
106.
I don't know if it's the 106, and then the JX3P. And each one of those engines, in the menus, you can adjust to make it sound older. I think they call it vintage, but I can't remember. But I don't know what I can't remember is if that's implemented into the System 8 engine itself, or if it's only applying it to those ACB recreations. But it definitely sounds. I always dialed in a little bit when I had a System 8 because it just sounded good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And I've never had a System 8, but I've owned, the Roland Cloud and had access to the software versions of those plug outs basically. And I always thought they sounded pretty good as well. But it would be cool to get an actual analog version of some of those, but they'll probably never.
We got to say it every episode.
Poly Aftertouch. Is that the one?
We say that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. we got a bingo card going.
Yes.
Yeah, we got Behringer. They'll take care of it. Don't worry. I'll be throwing an analog version of all those things.
And we can talk a little bit about news as well. There's been a couple things that have cropped up here in the last couple days, and one thing is the Behringer 2600. They are essentially starting to send those out to retailers, and they've announced a price of $599 US. I think I had said I thought it would probably be about $600. So
yeah, that's a lot of people were guessing right around there.
Yeah, there were some people who were saying
Wow.
700, 600. So, are either you guys planning to pick one of those up?
No, I got too many monosynths. Too many paraphonic ones too.
What about you? What about you, Aaron? Is that something that would?
While I can't imagine having too many mono or paraphonic synths, I don't have any plans immediately to pick up a 2600. I just placed an order for a Pro 3 yesterday, so
Oh wow, cool.
that's a good chunk of change. That's hopefully will be my main mono once that shows up.
Your mono mono.
It's pretty serious. Pretty serious specs on that guy. It's got 3 different filters.
The
so it
filters,
should be
yeah,
able to
that's like the
cover a lot of ground.
main thing I think is having all those
Yeah.
filters on there. Yeah, I don't think I'll be getting.
I think that 2600 reissue though, I think it's going to sell just.
Yeah, it'll sell.
I'm
plenty.
trying to think of maybe it'll sell as well as the Model D reissue they did. Because Behringer's had a few synths that have just sold like hotcakes, like the DeepMind. I think that sold a ton. So this one, it's going to sell like crazy. Basically, everybody that wants one is going to get one, I imagine.
Yeah, and there's people that probably got synth blue balls from the 2600 that Korg released, but it was only made like 800 of them for the whole world or
Yeah.
something. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to scoop up the Behringer, I'm sure.
Here's one of the reasons why I personally won't do it is, well, I got a Eurorack, so I've got a lot of analog oscillators in there, filters in there, all analog. Envelopes, sample and hold, everything that the ARP has. Now it's not going to have the same exact sound, but it's got just as much sculpting ability. And here's the other thing: Behringer's making it, from what I understand, the ARP 2500, which was the actual modular version of the 2600. So if I wanted certain modules from the 2600, I could simply get another big ass rack case or a couple small ones and then throw those modules over there.
Isn't Behringer releasing that that modular set? The whatever I don't know what that is. It the System 2500 or what do they call that?
Yeah, I think it's the ARP 2500. I could be wrong. I just know that it was the predecessor to the ARP, made by ARP.
I remember seeing videos about that led you to the impression that yeah, Behringer's got a whole line planned so that you can build your own 2500
Yeah, and
rack.
they already kind of did a similar thing with the System 55, the Moog, the big Moog modular.
And then the System 100, I think, is either 100 or 500. I can't remember.
Yeah,
100.
I know that Ranzi on YouTube had, and also Jamie of Geosynths, they have a couple of those modules, and there were some issues with the oscillator tuning. I don't know exactly what was going on there, but I know that they had to. I think Ranzi had to have his replaced. So hopefully they fix that and they don't run into issues like that with any of the other clones that they do.
Yeah, I think on Jamie's last show, maybe it was, sounded like they've actually done revisions to the hardware slightly since the initial release, and that they're on revision 3 already.
Yeah.
Which implies, well, and I think we had even talked about it on that show. Why would you rush something like that to the point where you were discovering things as obvious as a tuning issue?
Yeah, that's true.
Post-release.
Especially when, I mean, I don't pay attention to the modular space, so I don't know. But they're gonna be priced at a point to where they're gonna be.
They're undercutting everybody.
Everyone. Yeah.
No, because modular is a boutique market for the most part.
There's really no reason to rush.
Yeah.
Wait, make sure they do it right, and yeah, that's kind of seems to be the thing with a lot of the manufacturers lately, releasing too early and basically having their customers beta test, which is not a fun thing when you're buying stuff like this, in my opinion. But you know,
that's an entirely different conversation.
Yeah.
The premium priced beta testing.
Yeah, even if it's the Behringer stuff, though, I mean, you know, don't do that to your customer. You'll get a bad rep out of that. And you know, there's already people irritated at Behringer with some of this, and if at the same time they release products that are not that don't operate correctly from the get-go, it's not good. So I don't know, but there was some other news that we could talk about real quick, and that was the I don't know what you would call it, but it was basically a base station 2. It's called the AFX Station, and it's basically a black and purple base station. Did you see any of that, Aaron?
I magically bumped into it while I was looking at Pro 3s and Matrix Brutes, and I was like, "What is that?" So it looks like, I mean, I read the whole spiel on it. As far as I can tell, it's got some additional text above the keyboard, which all of that. So the Base Station 2, you know, released forever ago. And I don't know if at any point they updated the text along the keys where you hit a function button, then you press one of the keys on the keyboard to get into the global settings. And they've introduced a lot of things since the release, like including a paraphonic and a thing where you can change the patch with every key press, stuff like that. So with this black edition, they've got more text above the keys. And as far as I know, that's the only difference from the blue edition is it's got different text and a different paint job, but because it's the exact same sound engine, and I think maybe the firmware is the latest firmware, but it's basically a new coat of paint with a little bit of text, and they're really they're marketing the functionality where, yeah, you can assign, so every key press does a different patch, so you can go crazy with your Aphex Twin desires. But I just don't know enough about Aphex Twin to know how that is an Aphex Twin thing to do.
CowFood, what do you make of this?
Well, let me ask you, Aaron. You seem to know more about it than I do, other than the text and paint. Is there any extra functionality in the firmware versus the blue firmware?
Not that I could tell, because I didn't see a single new control on there or a new button. Look, the panel looked. I mean, I'm the Base Station 2 is possibly that's the synth that I'm the most familiar with, and it doesn't look like. And I don't know if it's limited edition. I got the impression it's limited edition.
Whatever.
Yeah, so I'm sure sales will determine the limitation on the edition.
Right.
Right.
How limited it actually
Exactly.
is.
I mean, it looks cool. I'm totally fine with the looks. It looks cool.
At least it's not black.
Yeah, it's the same price.
Black and green, like the era stuff. Black and purple looks a little better, but at the same time, I saw that and I was like, I don't understand.
Well,
why this is a thing right now. So,
you could speculate about making black versions of things as a trend, and I definitely don't want to go there. But the base station's been around for a really long time. It hasn't had a facelift of any kind. It's a really good. It's a popular synth. It's a well-selling synth. So to me, it makes sense from a marketing perspective to say, hey, let's slap a new coat of paint on it, and just see if the sales go up even more or whatever. It's
kind of something that you tend to see towards the end of a product life cycle. They'll give something a little facelift, new coat of paint, kind of, and drive additional sales before they release something else. I don't know. I had an original base station back in the day, and what I liked about the base station 2 was that it had similar design cues to the original, which I liked. So, again, if you make any synth black, it's going to look cool, and I will at least look at it and be like, that looks cool.
I think it's got like purple or violet LEDs instead of blue LEDs.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of a 90s thing. Like it has a total kind of 90s look to it, I think.
Yeah, it feels 90s.
I like the 90s. What about you, CowFood? You like the 90s?
Nah.
The 1890s.
1890s. Back on the ranch with the cows.
With the cows, eating the grass.
Right. But yeah, no, I think the black one looks pretty cool. It might drive people to sell their BS2 blues for cheap. So maybe you can find a cheap base station too.
Yeah, and I mean the price on this. You said it costs the same as an original.
Yeah, I don't see that the price changed.
Yeah. That's good though, because then if you want the black one, you can get the black one, or if you want the regular, what color is the regular one? It's like kind of a blue, like a teal.
It's almost identical, except the knobs are white on the top instead of black on the top. Mm-hmm. And on this one, there's kind of a gray bar there above the keys, whereas it's a blue. Above the knobs and above the keys is a blue bar instead of that gray or white bar.
And that's kind of the heritage of the original base station. It had that.
And then the pitch and mod wheel have a blue glow, whereas this one appears to be kind of a purpley glow.
Purpley purple.
But it looks like the LEDs. No, those look like they're red. So I think that's pretty sure those are the same color as the original.
I watched the Sweetwater demo, at least part of it, and I don't remember what color the LEDs are.
They're purple.
They are purple. Okay. Well, there you go, folks. So yeah, that's cool. So Aaron, you said you're pretty familiar with the original. Is this something that you might pick up at some point? Again? Now that there's a black one with purple LEDs?
Well,
and an Aphex Twin logo on the back?
Yeah. If I was an Aphex Twin fan, I would definitely pick this thing up. Because, which I can't decide if it'd bother me or not if more synth manufacturers partnered with musicians in a way that's more productive than, say, the M Audio Venom partnering with whoever that was that we were reminiscing about.
I was actually going to mention that because the last time I remember, an artist of some type, basically, this is a little different because there's actual branding on here. So I guess that's kind of more Nicky Romero. Like he has done kind of some things like that where he's branded some plugins. But the last time I had seen that in hardware was the M Audio Venom with the Crystal Method. And I remember thinking, oh, dude, if Crystal Method thinks it's cool, like, it's got to be cool. And Nick Bat was singing its praises, and I bought one, and I hated it.
And you never spoke to either of them ever again.
No. Well, it was funny because in the M Audio Venom, you could still look up the Crystal Method video, the promo video of them. And they're like, yeah, we made this song, we used the Venom in it, and it's like one little sound that they used in the song. And I was like, that's probably not a good sign.
But it's an interesting idea.
Well, and the base station is already a good synth. So this is kind of new coat of paint, AFX Twin logo, maybe a little different features. I'm
curious to see if they continue to sell them side by side. That'll kind of tell you what their intention is, if it's meant to replace it, or if it is in fact a more of a limited edition.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't the Slim Fatty sponsored by Orbital? They had a special edition Orbital with their patches on it.
I don't remember that.
The white Slim Fatty.
That's what I was thinking. If it would have been Orbital, probably, but it would have been white because I've see a lot of white with Orbital art.
Well, because I've got a white Little Fatty, but I don't remember any promos with Orbital with any of the Moog stuff. But I mean, that was when I was just getting into hardware, so I could have missed it. So, but it's weird that I didn't see that one, but I saw the Crystal Method one because that was about the same time, like 2006-ish. Right? Does that sound right?
What, the Slim Fatties?
Yeah.
Those were 2012, I thought.
Okay, then was it Little Fatty 06?
I'm not sure.
06,
how far
07?
back now.
Somewhere around there. I remember they did come out with different colored Little Fatties, in terms of the chassis. They had like a purple one and a green one and a white one. But yeah, I don't remember any kind of artist ties to anything other than just seeing general artist interviews about Moog, like the Trent Reznor one.
Yeah,
talking about the Voyager.
One I watched.
Yeah, that one was cool.
But what I'd like to see is something like a Yamaha CS80 re-release with the Vangelis edition.
Yeah, but they did that reface. Didn't they do a reface version?
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count. It's like a Roland Boutique, but worse.
I'm just trying to think, like, what would be your dream re-releases, or if Roland re-released a proper analog Juno with somebody, like, I can't think of the artist that made the Juno most famous.
You gotta do the Jupiter 8 with Howard Jones. That's what they should do. Because he loved the Jupiter 8.
Yeah.
Or Durand.
I mean, that would just, it's like marketing on steroids. If you think, everybody would go nuts over a reissue of the Jupiter 8 anyway. But if they did it with some artist who was just iconic and they use that, it'd be like, people are going to lose their minds or something.
Cool. Well, that's all the news I can think of. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about or mention here today for the show?
Only that the monopolys, I think, will start shipping soon too.
Yes. Now,
see those by Christmas.
I've already seen people saying that the monopoly doesn't sound like the original. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know though, because
I've heard that too.
Never had an original.
Got one in their studio.
That's a tough argument. I don't know if they had multiple revisions of the original and how the aging of the components might have changed the sound.
Yeah, so you kind of run into. I guess it depends.
How do you reference that?
if it has at least the character of an original. You know, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. We'll see what happens when those start shipping. That was the one that I thought, like, the aesthetics, like, I really liked the way it looked, because it looks kind of like a Monopoly in terms of the styling, the design language, and I think it looks way better than the Poly D. So, I don't know.
And you don't have to say Poly D.
Poly D.
That's my terrible Boston accent.
Jim Tan Laundry. Beat up that beat.
So what's your full take on the 10? I mean, I want to know how you got.
Yeah. So
How many hours have you had that for?
I got it on Monday.
Oh, okay.
So I just got it a few days ago. I immediately started playing around with it because this is along the same lines as the ARP 2600. Like, it's one of those synths that, like, I never thought I would have a Prophet 10 sitting here. So when the opportunity arose for me to grab one, I did, just like the ARP 2600. And this
was the 10 by Timbrel, the original?
I don't
Didn't
know.
it have two keyboards?
Well, they had two versions of the
I think
10.
it did.
They had a version with one keyboard, but it overheated a bunch. So they had to take and revert those all back to Prophet 5s, if I understand right. And then they did a Prophet 10 with two keyboards, but I don't think they made very many of those either. So,
Why wouldn't you want a hand warmer built into your keyboard?
right, or a fire starter.
I don't understand.
If you're out in the winter cold,
That would be so awesome. You're just like,
Prophet 10. So yeah, I don't know. This is, the Dave Smith stuff. I've always kind of said, like, I've never really grabbed anything because there's always something I want more, and now they've done this, in which I want this more than anything else that was out there. So, and I'm kind of running out of stuff to pick up anyway, which I guess is a good problem to have, because I'm not going to go vintage analog ever because there's just too many issues. But that's why I want to see these companies do reissues like this, and then when they do, like, I'll be first one in line with my hand up to grab one. But it's really cool because this has a lot of character that I didn't expect, because I've heard the Prophet 5 on YouTube, but having one here and being able to mess around with this and actually hear the difference between a Rev 1 all the way through to the Rev 4 here in one synth is pretty unique as well. So I don't know, I'm a big fan of this. I didn't know how I was gonna feel about it necessarily, but yeah, it's definitely awesome. It's got some of the best brass sounds I've ever heard. So
Yeah.
and I will say that part of the opinion that I kind of had towards the Prophet series synths, like the Prophet 5, because no one's, I'm not going to spend $12,000 or how much they are for a vintage, but I've used the Arturia plugin, and I understand now, but not at the time, that the plugins don't sound necessarily anything like the originals, and I never liked I never liked the Arturia Prophet 5 version at all. So, yeah.
name only.
Yes.
Did you try the Repro 5?
No,
That's a lot closer.
haven't tried that either.
I haven't tried it, but I don't know.
Yeah, Repro's decent.
I'm a fan of the hardware. So, I mean, if we can talk Roland into doing some stuff, like, I would be a happy man.
So do you have some patches that you've really liked on there? I wouldn't mind hearing some of it if you've got a way to do that.
I didn't kind of write any down. I went through, like, the first several banks. What I do like is...
and I was wondering, did it...
I like the feel
Does it
of these
have
switches. These are
new
nice.
patches, or did they port over the old patches from the previous revs?
Oh, no. My tablet just died. What shot do I have up? Do I have the synth shot?
The we're seeing the keyboard.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know, because the originals only had a handful of presets available anyways. There's multiple banks in here. Let's see how high it goes. It goes to 5 banks.
Wow.
5 banks, and then you can go up within each, I guess that's a group, and then there's the banks within the groups, and you can go up to 5. So I don't know however many that is. That's probably a few hundred at least. So I don't know. I didn't write any of them down. I only got into the 400 range before I decided to move shit out here and try and set things up for the show. But yeah, it sounds awesome. We can kind of go through a couple here. Let's go down to into the 3s maybe.
I'm just hoping it's shipped with nice presets because
Yeah, it's not like the Moog 1.
I'm amazed
Where
how
the
many synths I've had where the presets were like, wow, I don't like a single one of these.
Yeah.
Once I learned the synth, I'm like, this synth sounds amazing. I love it.
It's that was one of the issues I had with the Moog 1. It didn't have the best presets, and this definitely is not like that. It's a lot simpler of a synth too, and it's kind of it's good at what it's good at. So
Big wide sweet spot.
yeah, but it does really good bass. See, here's the thing: it's a mono output. I don't know if you probably can't see that in the shot that's there, but it's a mono output, and with that, I think it helps with doing bass instead of stereo. I know you like filter sweeps. And that's the Rev 3 filter. And we can switch it to the Rev 1 and 2. It can do, it reminds me, in the 70s when every synthesizer sounded like outer space. This thing can definitely sound like outer space. Like a slow. Oh, and there's aftertouch now, which is nice. It's not poly aftertouch, but the originals, if I understand, did not have aftertouch.
Aftertouch routable?
Is it what?
Routable.
I don't know exactly. I haven't done any programming yet. I think that you can assign aftertouch. I don't know how to do it.
Well, it's assignable as routable.
Yeah, well, so right now it's in this patch it's doing filter modulation.
Yep.
Let me see if I can figure out which one it is. So here we go, filter. That's on the mod wheel. So I guess these are your, that says the mod wheel. So I don't know exactly how you route stuff to the aftertouch.
It might just turn on the mod wheel, or I don't know. It sounds like it might be fixed. That's cool though.
I'll have to.
It has it. So.
I still need to RTFM to see, because there's probably some other stuff that you can do that's not, right here for me to look at. I'm guessing. Maybe not. Maybe it's super duper simple, which is fine too. Either way, I'm totally fine. This thing sounds awesome. I don't know how does it come through on there? Does it sound cool to you guys?
Even really low quality, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the raw sound is so good.
And that's one of the things I love. There's no effects on this, so what you're hearing comes straight. It's the synth itself.
Well, if you want to stereoize it, I would recommend a good stereo reverb or ping pong delay or a stereo delay.
Yeah, what was the reverb you were telling me I should grab?
Strymon Big Sky, I think, a long time ago.
The Strymon. No. Didn't you tell me in a text message about a reverb that I should get?
Oh, no, I mentioned you should get that's a mono delay, but it's a Space Echo RE201 tape delay. Vintage tape.
The original. I don't think he'd be satisfied with the RE20.
No, hell no. He wants the original. You have to replace the tape, clean the heads with rubbing alcohol and Q-tips. You got to maintain that thing, but yeah, you need an original.
Sorry, I ripped my mic out when I was walking over to the other studio so I can change some shots. Cool, guys.
But, yeah, are you going to get one of those RE201s? You going to get the original?
I don't know. I'll have to look at them. See how much they cost. Are they expensive?
Yeah, they're about 1,300, 500, 1,500.
And they need to, well, I guess the best way to go would be buy one that's been recently maintained.
Oh, absolutely. You can't not have one that's not maintenance. It has to be in mint condition, too, at that price.
Yeah, buying something like that scares me, knowing the how hard it must be to get the components to go in there in the first place.
But if you want a stereo, that's not the thing you want to get.
I didn't think it was stereo. I thought it was strictly mono.
Now, I mentioned that to Marshall because that's just going to keep them vintage. And they get an even more vintage sound.
Well, if you get two RE201s and then set them slightly offset, then you can get stereo.
Yeah, you're right.
That's like I would probably do fake stereo just through the DAW. I'm trying to find my...
Yeah, just like one of the channels.
Yeah, I would just take the channel, duplicate it, and then, push the pan on one channel left, one right. And then you can offset with time delay and get a little bit of stereo width that way as well. Hold on. I'm trying to find my main camera here. Is it this one? So that you guys can see me. There we go.
So that CowFood, I was thinking about that component modeling. What was the first name in that
voice
designation?
Voice component.
Voice component modeling.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times with a synthesizer, if I have extra LFOs, I'll say, okay, this one I'm not using this LFO, so I'll set it up to randomize the filter cutoff by a value of 5 with every key press, and then I'll set the next LFO to randomize, say, the resonance with a value of 5 with every key press. But I'm assuming
that's
if because you've got LFOs per voice and you've got LFOs that aren't per voice. So because I'm trying to think if I can approximate what you're describing with any synthesizer that's got a good mod matrix. Like, could you do that with even, because you said you did it on your Rev 2, but you didn't have the software. So how did you do it on your Rev 2 without the software?
Well, there's a little screen on here.
He did it.
So the functionality to do the component modeling is built into there, or did you just approximate it using other built-in methods?
He was painting the hallway through the letterbox.
Yeah, no, it's a stepped gate sequencer. So I go into the stepped gate sequencer section on the synthesizer.
So it's got a built-in. So that's a built-in feature, the gate sequencer.
Yes.
Okay.
And you set it up for setting up the key step with my key step.
Yeah.
And then for each key that's hit, it'll step through the gate sequencer and then route that value to whatever destination you want. In this case, I said oscillator frequency 1.
But it's not, because you said is it per voice, the way you've implemented it?
Well, is that right?
Well, you've got...
Because it seems like it's just changing it for key press.
You've got 16 voices, but you only did it for 8 steps, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So yours is going to kind of change on the second round.
Right.
So,
But see, it's for every key press. So like with a chord again, this is where it comes. This is where it's important. Is that when you're putting a chord, it's playing however many keys you have down, or those voices. But I guess in this case, it's not exactly per voice. It's because let's say I'm doing a 3-note chord.
well, if it was per voice, you'd have to have 16 steps, one per voice.
Well, in this case, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. But if you want to emulate a Jupiter 8, it's going to be
that's
eight
a whole.
voices, so.
Well, I don't know how you could make your Rev 2 sound like a Jupiter 8 using this method, because how do you recreate a filter
Well, that's the
randomized
problem.
parameters?
Oh, yeah,
It's
the
still a
filter
process,
character is
the
going to be
filter's
different.
not the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I recommend you read that article that we posted.
I perused it, and for some reason, it wasn't clicking for me. But I think it was really late at night when I was looking at that.
Right.
So there's also some examples and that the guy has on there of YouTube videos where he walks through how he programmed a patch that sounds like a CS80 doing the Vangelis thing for Blade Runner. And yeah, it's essentially, he calls it a lookup table, but essentially what he's doing is routing, different lanes of parameters on the synth. I think he did 4 for that Vangelis patch. To each step on that gated step sequencer, and he set it to key trigger mode, I think. So where each time you press a key, it advances along the sequencer. Does that make sense? Where he's got the parameters mapped. And then he also said that sometimes he'll add a little bit of slop even on top of that, because those, the Rev 2's got the slop feature.
Yeah.
And then also he can also do additional kind of wiggles using the LFOs.
Exactly. So.
It's pretty cool. Like it's a unique way to utilize a gated step sequencer in a way I wouldn't have really thought about.
Yeah, that's what's piqued my interest. Is it's a way to do, utilize a mod. It's essentially utilizing a modulation matrix in a different way, but in this case, it's using a step sequencer. Which there's a whole lot of synthesizers that have a step sequencer that can change parameters, like even a
as long as they've got a
chord mini log.
As long as they've got
or the monolog, I think can do that.
Yeah, as long as it's got a gated mode and it can be triggered per step. Yes.
Oh yeah, I don't know if those ones have the gated mode, but
yeah, so there may be some synths with sequencers on, but that don't have those 2 additional features that make it possible to do the voice component modeling.
But going back to what you were saying earlier, Marcel, it doesn't make much sense to do it with a mono synth.
Right. Well, and that's I think that's part of the reason why we've gotten more mono reissues than poly reissues. Right.
Right. Yep.
So. But now there's a whole new way to maybe think about doing that to some of these manufacturers.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Another way of thinking of it, if you have paraphony, then each oscillator is its own voice in that case.
Right.
And so each one can be offset. But then again, you're sharing just one filter, one envelope.
Yeah, you don't get that full articulation, which has its own flair, right? But at the same time, like, whenever even with the ARP 2600, which you can do an upper and lower voice basically, it's cool, but you're always like, man, I wish I can get it to do this, but it's not really polyphonic. So
yeah. But anyway, voice component modeling, I think that's the wave of the future. And I think we're seeing it in the Prophet 5.
I was amazed that you found, you were just doing some messing around on the internet, or?
Well, no, I was just reading through Sequential's forums, and
he was waiting for his video to load because he has bad internet.
Right.
Those Cindy Crawford pics just scroll down the
Line
screen.
by line.
Yep, that's what it was.
It's the internet from 92.
AOL.
No, Prodigy, man. Prodigy was the shit, man.
Let's not go there. But yeah, I was just reading through the sequential forums, and that guy, and I remember his name now. Circuit, what's his name?
Oh, let me see.
Can you pull up the VCM website again?
Yeah, let me.
I'm gonna give him credit. He deserves all the credit for this.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll put a link in the description. You folks can take a look at this. Does it give his name? I mean, can look up his YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah.
It occurs to me that when I get the Pro 3, I'll have to try it, but I could probably assign one LFO to
Creative
one oscillator and the other LFO to
Creative Spiral.
the other oscillator.
Creative Spiral.
Yeah, that's his name,
That's his
on,
name.
on YouTube.
And yeah, I was looking through the Sequential Circuits forums and saw that whole thing about being
I'm
able
not
to
signed in, apparently. Okay, I'll do that later.
to model a bunch of synthesizers on your Rev 2, and that's one of the things I wanted to do. I'm like, one
Well,
of the
and
things I kind of had concerns about. And I'm
just
like,
so
maybe I
happened-
shouldn't buy it.
You had a Rev 2 sitting there as well, which is cool. So you could try
No,
it.
I didn't buy it until after. I mean, I read that first. And I'm like,
Oh, okay.
Now I'm gonna buy.
Well,
the
so
Rev
how
2
long ago
because
did you read
obviously-
about this?
Yeah, I thought
This
you had
is
the Rev
cool.
2 ages ago.
No, I read about this like 4 months ago. So I
Gotcha.
got the Rev 2 3 months ago. So it was about a month before I bought it. I pretty
Okay.
much bought it right after I read that.
You should have shared with us, man.
Well,
It's cool though, because now it's all coming out because the reissue of the Prophets.
right.
And it makes sense because it seems like they are probably doing something kind of in line with this. Possibly, we don't know for sure. Obviously, we're totally speculating, but
Yeah.
I know for sure.
okay.
I know.
CowFood's on the record. He knows. CowFood knows.
Yep. Well, it's also mentioned, there's a little hint that this was going to happen with a reissue of the Rev 3 in that article you pulled up,
Okay.
Ah.
which was written years ago, I believe, a couple of years. It's been out for a while.
Let's take a look.
This guy.
I feel like we're getting into Mandela effect territory here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
guys,
in there.
it's a really intuitive article. It goes pretty deep into some of this stuff. So if you're really interested in this, definitely check it out. It even walks you through how to set up the patches, and you can write him a nice email and tell him, dude, you're brilliant, and
Yeah. Check his website out.
high five.
Support his patches.
Yeah,
That's the best way to do it.
yeah, and subscribe to his
Got a Rev
YouTube
2?
channel.
Buy it.
That's so awesome.
Now I need to buy it.
Yeah, CowFood. You need to get out.
You got to get that sound tower software too. God damn it. See, all this extra cost.
See, now you got a Prophet Rev 2. Now you got to get the rest of the package here.
Exactly.
Cool, guys. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. Thank you guys very much for coming on the channel and giving some perspective on this glorious time that we have here now with this reissue of the Prophet 5 and the Prophet 10.
I'm looking forward to some future epic demos of your Prophet 10 there, Marshall.
I'll be hopefully recording some of those either later this evening or tomorrow. So yeah, look on my YouTube channel. Those will be up soon. Cool, guys.
All right.
Have a good one.
Chowder.